in Mazgan.
No one see you.
שומע?
Huh?
Hear me?
I don't know.
Recording in progress. Recording stopped.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Shalom, I'm David Mencer,
Recording
Israeli
in
government
progress.
spokesman for the National Public Diplomacy Directorate here in the office of the Prime Minister. It's Wednesday, the 29th of January, day 481 since the start of the October 7th war. Quick update from me and then we'll take your questions. Please remember to put them in the chat together with your full name and news outlet and we'll take a few. Firstly, let me start with UNRWA. Yesterday, Israel's ambassador to the United Nations, Mr. Danny Danon, made a comprehensive speech at the UN. There, he laid out the case against UNRWA, exposing its corruption and its infestation by Hamas, chapter and verse, and I would direct you to it. In addition, I would also preface my remarks today by saying the following. Firstly, from the government of Israel's perspective, let me provide this assurance. Israel is completely committed to the uninterrupted flow of humanitarian aid into Gaza to provide uninterrupted aid to those that need it. Secondly, Israel has operated and will continue to operate in full compliance with the rule of law. Next, allow me to summarize the case against UNRWA. It's been often repeated, but let me share with you the main details. Israel is committed to the end of UNRWA's complicity with Hamas. Why? Of UNRWA's complicity with Hamas. Why? Because if providing a better future for Gazans is your priority, then let me say this straight. UNRWA equals Hamas. Hamas has made public, irrefutable evidence. Israel has made public, irrefutable evidence. UNRWA is riddled with Hamas operatives. Not just the 19 that are being investigated in a half-hearted way by UNRWA, but hundreds of UNRWA employees. Let me give you some examples. One even kidnapped an Israeli civilian on October 7th while on UNRWA's payroll. An UNRWA staff member actively participated in the October 7th terror attack, kidnapping Yonatan Samoreno and delivering him into Hamas captivity. Another UNRWA staff too media reported even that hostages were held in UN facilities. Now, Philip Lazzarini and UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres were informed about this, so they knew. But unfortunately, they did nothing. On UNRWA's funding, Israel makes clear if a state funds UNRWA, that state is funding terrorists. So that means that taxpayers in international countries are paying Hamas salaries. UNRWA employs over 1,200 Hamas members, including terrorists who carried out the October 7th massacre. This isn't aid, it's direct financial support for terror. Next on this neutrality claim made by UNRWA. UNRWA is actually a shield for terrorism. The UN's internal Colonna report confirmed that what we've long known is that UNRWA is a front for Hamas. Schools were built over Hamas tunnels. Teachers were moonlighting as terrorists. This isn't humanitarian aid, it's institutionalized radicalization. So in 48 hours, UNRWA will be banned from Israel. No officers, no contact, no operations. UNRWA is a threat to Israel's national security. A sovereign state cannot be expected to host an agency that bankrolls its enemies. UNRWA is a threat to Gazans themselves. It perpetuates the conflict. Over the last few days, UNRWA's spokespeople have hit the airways speaking of their aid. It is simply untrue. Let me give you the real figures. In December of 2024, UNRWA contributed a pathetic 0.6% of Gaza's humanitarian aid, while other agencies actually stepped up. UNRWA hoarded resources and inflated its role. But strangely, in the last few months, UNRWA have delayed aid deliveries. And lo and behold, as we've approached January the 30th, tomorrow, it is upped its game. If they cared about Gazans, they would now hand over the aid to other organizations, more efficient and not tainted by terror. So we say this loud and clear. Secretary General Guterres has a choice to make. Continue with a failed political dogma or provide a better future for Gazans. Israel says very clearly to Secretary Guterres, what matters is what works. Abandon UNRWA and give Gazans a chance. UNRWA is not irreplaceable. Indeed, its Director General, Philip Lazzarini, has admitted this himself. The world must stop propping up this failed institution and redirect agencies untainted by terror, corruption, and political games. Every dollar to UNRWA is a dollar to Hamas. The time to defund and dismantle UNRWA is now. So, to the way forward, Israel believes that the way forward is clear. Aid needs to be redirected to UN agencies, other NGOs that work like the WFP, the World Food Programme, UNICEF, and UNOPS, which already operate in Gaza and provide aid without the baggage of terror ties. These other agencies have a proven track record of efficiency and accountability, and also local and regional NGOs should be empowered instead of funneling money into a corrupt bureaucracy. International aid should directly go to vetted NGOs that focus on education, on healthcare, and economic development, not on simply perpetuating dependency. So, international institutions and the United Nations must support a sustainable future, not a permanent refugee crisis. UNRWA has kept Palestinians as refugees for 75 years. It's time to shift focus to real resettlement solutions, self-reliance programs, and long-term economic development that serve the people and not a political agenda. UNRWA is not the only option. It's just one of the worst ones. The world must move forward. Next, let me update you on the latest on hostage releases. Tomorrow, the third phase of the implementation of the agreement is scheduled to take place. If Hamas complies, Israeli civilian Arbel Yehud, a female soldier Agam Berger, and another civilian will be returned to Israel. Furthermore, on Saturday, again, if Hamas complies, another 3 more hostages will be returned to Israel. And we've made clear that 90 hostages remain in Gaza. We will not rest until they are all brought home and set free, the living for rehabilitation and the deceased for a decent burial. It is Israel's government's solemn duty to bring these people home, and we will not rest until every single one of them are brought home. Next to the north, the ceasefire with Lebanon has been extended until February 18th, until which time IDF forces will remain in the area. This is after the original agreement, which made clear the obligation for the exit of Hezbollah forces beyond the Litani River, which should have taken place within 60 days and has not taken place. So this agreement has not been enforced adequately by the state of Lebanon and its military. This takes place, this extension, the 18th of February in full coordination with the United States. Okay, so that's the end of our briefing today. I will now take your questions. Please put your questions into the chat together with your news outlet, and we will take a few. Firstly, a question here from Lara Jakes at the New York Times. Could you please share details about the visit of Trump's envoy, Mr. Steve Witkoff, and Defense Minister Dermer to the Netzarim corridor, or confirm whether the visit took place? Thanks. That's from Lara Jakes at the New York Times. Thank you very much for that question, Lara. As is the practice here at our office, we talk about these meetings after they have taken place, and then we give a readout of the results of those meetings, including photographs where relevant. We won't be sharing the details we have. So I've got nothing more to share with you until our office puts out a statement about when and where those meetings have taken place and what was discussed. Next question from Sarah Lemel. Sarah, if you could add your outlet, I'd appreciate that. But you ask, Hamas accuses Israel of delaying aid transports to Gaza and said it might affect the upcoming hostage release. Do you think there might be a delay? Thank you for that question, Sarah. If you could just tell us who your news outlet is, and in the meantime, I will provide an answer to that question about Hamas accusing Israel of delaying aid transports to Gaza and said it might affect an upcoming hostage release. So the first thing I would say to you, Sarah, is that our eyes here and your eyes as well in the media should be very wide open that Hamas is a genocidal, murderous, jihadist, terrorist organization, more renowned for outrageous acts of inhumanity than keeping to deals. So that's why I prefaced all my remarks in terms of the release of our hostages about saying if Hamas complies to the agreements. When it comes to aid, Israel has facilitated as much aid as possible to be sent into Gaza. Kogat, the organization within the Israeli army, which is coordinating that entry of aid, provides almost daily and hourly accounts of the amount of aid going in. There is more aid going in. Let me share with you this one point. There was aid going in before this ceasefire, a lot of aid, more than 1,300,000 tons of aid which went in. The issue wasn't the aid going in, the issue was distribution. Hamas have stolen much of the aid and sell it onto Gazans after taking their share at vastly increased prices. Obviously, the distribution of aid was difficult during an active war zone when we were seeking out the terrorists and eliminating them. That is not the case right now, so there should be no excuse for this aid being distributed. We've also made the point that there's aid which has been held back by UNRWA, which they have only now stepped up their operation, strangely close to the tomorrow's deadline when our cooperation with UNRWA will come to an end, as legislated by our democratically elected parliament. Okay, next question from Hannah Julie, another question about the agenda for Mr. Witkoff and if you'll speak to the press. Thank you for that question, Hannah Julian from the Jewish Press. As I said to you, we will be providing details, as is our practice, after these events and different meetings take place, and I haven't got anything more to add on the visit of Mr. Witkoff. Next question here is from Callum Patton from AFP, Callum Patton from Agence France Presse, and you're also asking about Mr. Witkoff. We've already provided an answer for that. And so is Melanie Lidman, also of AP, also asking a question about the agenda of Mr. Witkoff. And again, we've already provided that answer, but I'll say it again. It is Israel government practice to provide details of these sorts of visits after they take place, when we will provide a readout of the meeting, who he met, if and when these meetings have happened or will happen in the future. Okay, next question I can see here is from Isabel Debris. Isabel, if you could, from AP, also from AP. Can you clarify what you mean by operations being stopped, UNRWA operations being stopped in Jerusalem? And you're asking, you're asking about UNRWA health centers and schools tomorrow from the Old City to Shuafat refugee camp. Thank you for that question, Isabel. I will point you to the remarks made by Israel's ambassador to the United Nations when he made clear in his speech yesterday the details of the further lack of contact between Israel and UNRWA throughout Israel. Okay. Next question. And also, just if I could go back to you for a second, Isabel, we've made very, very clear now the case against UNRWA. We believe that um, it is irrefutable, that you cannot, with any good conscience, go on with this organization and their blatant covering up for a terrorist entity. And we would say to international funders of UNRWA, if you care about Gazans, if you care about Palestinians, then UNRWA is inefficient, wasteful, dishonest, and covers up for terrorists. So a better solution is available, and that is the resolution of the Israeli government not to cooperate with this organization, which actively is complicit and is um, um, flooded and has been permeated by Hamas terrorists. Okay. Question from Lisa Rozovsky from Haaretz. About IDF and COGAT allowed to coordinate its military activities in Gaza and the West Bank with UNRWA in cases of danger to life, for instance, if it needs to take over or attack a refugee camp or an UNRWA facility. Okay, I'm not quite sure what your question is there, Lisa. Or clearly, the threats to life are of supreme importance to the IDF and COGAT, so I'm not precisely sure what you are asking there. And the next question you ask is, UNRWA claims that, okay, so UNRWA, this false claim, you are repeating the false claim from UNRWA that it somehow contributes 60% of Gaza's population. Okay, so that is plainly not true. The UN, our ambassador to the UN, made clear yesterday, and Israel has also made clear, and I've made clear in this briefing actually, that UNRWA's supply of aid to Gazans has in the last few months been in single digits, not even up to 10%. More recently, I think in December, it got to 10%. So they are a minor player. They're not the majority player as they would like to portray themselves. It is a failed institution, Lisa. It doesn't work. It is inefficient and it is permeated with terrorism. So that is why Israel has made the commitment, as I did at the beginning of my briefing, that aid will continue uninterrupted into Gaza. To get to people that need it most. Israel will comply with international law, but UNRWA is part of the problem. It perpetuates this conflict. It teaches in its school that Israel will one day be replaced. It glorifies Jew killing. It glorifies jihad. The simple fact, Lisa, I would say to you, is that almost every single terrorist that took part in the October 7th massacres was a graduate of the UNRWA education system. Now, what other state would allow that education system to continue perpetuating itself to produce those sorts of Jew haters? The question we ask ourselves here in Israel is, who is a hero of a 15-year-old Gazan boy? Right now, that hero is most likely a Jew killer. Those are the posters which go up all over Gaza and in other places in the West Bank as well. That is not a sustainable future. Gaza needs to be demilitarized. Hamas needs to be removed from power. And of course, most importantly, Gaza needs to be de-radicalized. And part of that de-radicalization is ending UNRWA, which is simply perpetuating this conflict and keeping Gazans in misery like a drug dealer. Okay. Okay, next from Nadim Ibrahim from CNN. Can you tell us a bit more about the day after an UNRWA, as the UNRWA ban comes into effect? I did indeed speak about some of these agencies, Nadim, in my comments. I gave a fairly robust example of other agencies. Again, the best case scenario for UNRWA on its best days has been up to 10%. It touches 10% occasionally of the amount of aid which goes in, which means the overwhelming majority of aid which goes into supply Gazans is not through UNRWA. There are other options, more efficient, less tainted with terror options, and I've provided some examples of those for you here today. Okay, last question I can see here is from Melanie Lidman from AP. And you're asking about schools and clinics that UNRWA have been running, and right. So I've provided some of those details in my briefing, but I again would point you to Danny Danon's speech yesterday, where he provided some of those details. And again, in Judea and Samaria, I think UNRWA only provide. This morning I was briefed, and I was told that there are 40 UNRWA schools out of around 2,000 schools operating, Palestinian schools operating in Judea and Samaria. So, again, it is a minimal number of schools, and those schools can quite readily soak up those 40 schools, again, those 2,000 schools not being run by UNRWA, this failed jihadi supporting organization. Those schools not being run by UNRWA can soak up those 40 schools in other places in Judea and Samaria. Okay, so that's the last question we've got here today. Thank you for joining us. We'll have another briefing to update you on the latest developments, no doubt very, very soon. In the meantime, we're available for interview, and please do stay safe, and we'll see you at the next briefing. Thank you very much.